Hi and welcome to Polyglot Principles. My name is Modja and this is the channel where I teach you how to learn a language like a genius by teaching you the principles of language learning. Welcome once again. So today's topic is going to be the biggest language learning mistakes to avoid, right? So that's a natural question. What are the biggest language learning mistakes that you need to avoid, right? So I'm going to be giving very useful tips throughout the video up to the end, right? So make sure you don't miss out on the very important tips I'm going to be giving. Now, before we start, as usual, I have a question for you, right? What do you think are the most common or the biggest language learning mistakes out there? What, in your own experience as a language learner, what have you discovered, or what do you think, do you project to be the biggest language learning mistakes one can make? Alright, so write down your answer in the comment section below and then check to see if it agrees with the reasons I'm about to give. Alright, so let's get right into it. What's the first biggest language learning mistake? The first one is just unclear motivations, right? This is not just true of language learning, but it's true of anything that you'll ever do. Before you do something, it's important to know why you're doing it, why it matters. Right, so you don't just do stuff randomly, right? So, for example, I mean, this can happen often, right? You watch a video maybe about Japan, you get excited, you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna learn Japanese. You watch another video about China, all right, I'm gonna learn Chinese. You watch another video about, I don't know, Russia, I'm gonna learn Russian, right? This is being reactive, right? And what's the problem? If you don't know why you're learning a language, when it gets hard, you're gonna quit. You're gonna quit because there's nothing tying you to the project, right? If you start learning, let's say, German because your friends are learning German, right? At the beginning you're excited, but after a while when it gets hard, your mind is gonna ask you the question, why are you doing this? And you're not gonna have a good answer, and then you're gonna quit. It's obviously if you quit, you're never gonna learn the language. So before you start learning the language, right, this is you want to start with the end in mind. Why am I doing this? When the why is clear, now you can proceed to execution. Figure out why you're learning the language. Why Chinese? Why Spanish? Why German? Why whatever the language is? That's the first thing. You need to have clear motivations. Otherwise, you're going to quit. The next biggest language learning mistake is an unclear strategy. How are you going to learn the language, right? You don't just do the first thing that comes to mind. You decide, okay, now I'm gonna learn German, or whatever your language is. And then immediately you just start taking action, right? You start speaking, you start reading books, you start translating books, you start watching videos. That's not how it works. You need to think first. Think, then act. You need a strategy. What are you going to be doing, right? And why are you going to be doing it? Right? You start with a strategy. Like before I started learning German, I had a strategy for learning German, right? What am I going to be doing and why am I going to be doing it? I'm going to start with pronunciation. Why am I going to do it? It's important to have a clear strategy, right? And why is it important to have a strategy, you may ask? It's very simple. If you don't have a strategy, you can waste valuable time. You can waste a week. You can waste a month, you can waste a year, you can waste years. I don't know if you've had this experience before, where you've spent years learning a language and you never learned it. Maybe you spent, I don't know, you went through high school learning some language, maybe Spanish or whatever the language was. You learned it all throughout school and you never learned it. You clearly invested a lot of time. You did homework, you attended classes, you sat for exams, but you never learned the language. Why? Because you are not doing the right things, you see. That's the importance of a strategy. Strategy is very important. It doesn't matter how hard you work. If you don't do the right things, if you don't have the right strategy, you're going to fail, right? So this is very important. Ask yourself this, in the language you're learning, what is your strategy for learning the language? What activities are you going to do? What activities are you not going to do? And why, okay? And then here's the third biggest language learning mistake, and that's speaking late, right? So the most important activity you can do in learning a language is to speak. If you can only do one thing, let's say you have absolutely no time, you only have 1 hour a day or something like that to learn the language, and you're looking for only one activity you can do because you don't have time to do anything else, then that one activity when it comes to language learning is going to be to speak. Speaking is the most important language learning activity. Speaking with a native or someone who speaks the language. If you can do nothing else, just speak, right? So because it's the most important activity, you want to start speaking as soon as possible. You can't delay. You can't wait for a month before you start speaking or 2 months before you start speaking, because it's the most important thing you can do. Because what's going to happen if you take so long to speak, you're going to have difficulty expressing yourself. You're not going to be able to say the most basic things. You're going to become frustrated. You might even end up quitting. And it doesn't feel good. How good does it feel if, like, let's say after a month or 2 months of learning a language, you can't even have a basic conversation, right? So this is key. You want to speak as soon as possible. Some people even say speak from day one, right? I say once you've learned enough of the pronunciation, start speaking. Don't even wait to have vocabulary. Don't even wait to have grammar. Speak as soon as possible. Okay, and the fourth one is what is another biggest mistake you can make in language learning. One of the biggest mistakes you can make when learning a language is to give up when it gets hard. Learning a language is not easy. I'm not going to tell you it's easy and fun. Not always, right? In fact, at the very beginning, it's hard. It's not fun at all, right? You don't understand what anybody's saying. You can't say anything. There's all these new words. There are all these language structures. You're struggling to express yourself. That is not fun. That is not fun. And so it's very easy to give up. But notice, if you give up, you can never learn the language. If you give up, you lose automatically. If you keep going, there's at least hope that you will succeed, right? So you don't want to give up on the language, right? And also notice that there is such a thing as the learning curve. At the beginning, things are hard. If you persist a little bit at the start of a language, if you persist, you get to a point where it becomes a little fun, and then you experience a huge growth. That's if you're following the correct principles. And then you'll experience a plateau. A plateau is normal. It just means you're gathering more information. When you're at a plateau in your language learning process, you just have to persist, and then you'll be out of the plateau, provided that you're doing the right things. If you give up when you're at the plateau, you can't improve. And over time, your level at the language will go down, right? If you don't use the language, you become worse at the language, all right? So I've given you 4 big mistakes. 4 big mistakes that will stop you from learning your target language. Just to recap, one is unclear motivations. You don't know why you're learning the language. The other thing that will stop you is you have an unclear strategy. You don't know what activities to do and what activities not to do. Hence, you end up wasting time. The third reason is you start speaking late instead of speaking as soon as possible. The 4th biggest mistake you make is giving up when things get hard. If you avoid these mistakes, then you're going to become better at the language, and you're going to achieve your language learning goals if you avoid these 4 major mistakes. Thank you very much for watching this. Now, every single week on Monday at 8 a.m. Central African time, I publish a video, right? And the video is designed to just help you to learn a language like a genius by teaching you the principles of language learning. Thank you very much for watching this, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified every single time I publish a new video. Alright, bye.